Good evening. Today is December 3rd, 2025. I now call the Sherborn Board of Health meeting to order at 7:03 p.m. This is a virtual meeting and board members are required to announce their presence. We shall do so via alphabetical roll call. Go ahead, Daryl.
Carol Beardsley, present.
Steve Constantine, present.
Julie Dreyfus, present.
Diana Hook, present.
Rebecca Hunnewell, present.
Excellent. Do we have any unannounced items in the last 48 hours that are urgent and need to be addressed by the board before our next meeting?
Nothing for me.
Nothing that I'm aware of. Sarah or Mark, did anything come in this afternoon?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, excellent. So that we will address the agenda as it stands. We do not have any scheduled appointments this evening. We do have 2 items under the agent's business, and we have a number of housekeeping items under our other business. So I see that we have Miss Lynch here this evening, and that is one of her items. And I don't, Sarah, since you were admitting people, I don't see the property owners for 155 Maple. I just want to make sure I'm not missing that.
No, they're not here, nor are they in the waiting room.
Okay, perfect. So why don't we go ahead and start with 5 Washington Street, which is a review of proposed changes from office space to dwelling in office space. Mark, do you want to open this up for discussion?
Sure.
And you can tell Steve what you'd like him to pull up from the documents.
Yeah, well, if the board would like, we can look at the proposed arrangement and the present setup at the property. And you also have the certificate of compliance from 2007. The application came in as a building permit, and I in turn noted on the building application that this would be reviewed by the Board of Health. The present scenario is that there's all office space there, and they would like to change some of the office space into living quarters. So the board should have all that information, as well as the septic plan that was designed for this property. Originally, it was for commercial and office space, and each category had a minimum of 200 gallons per day. So the total gallonage for this property as designed back in, as shown on the septic plan back in 2007 was for 400 gallons. And the certificate has been issued for the property as well. The proposal is to have 2.64 2,642 square feet of office space, or that's what exists, and they could be reduced, leaving enough capacity for a 1-bedroom living facility. And I don't know if you would like me to go over the status of review with the various departments. It was reviewed at a land planning meeting today with the building commissioner, planning agent, and other members of the land planning group. And the decision was that for the zoning part of it, the building commissioner will handle that part. And as it relates to the proposal for 1-bedroom, that would require 110 gallons per day. The system is a Presby Envirotech chambers, which allows for a garbage grinder. So a 1-bedroom would require that there be 110 gallons capacity. Presently, as the arrangement is with the office space, there's the office space is utilizing 198 gallons per day. With that said, there's sufficient capacity for for the additional living space of 1-bedroom. We're looking at it that way. The building application came in and was noted as a living quarters, and I noted to the building commissioner during the meeting we had today, in respect to the process of this, he said that it would need, it's a living space, it would need to go through the ZBA, and he is the appointed ZBA commissioner, and he said it would create a living space within a non-residential unit. And that being said, that's the way it's being described. It's not being described as an accessory dwelling unit. It's being described as just noted. So I wanted to pass this by the board to make sure if you had any questions related to this application.
Okay, thanks,
I do
Mark.
You're
have a
welcome.
question just on the basic point. Is the dwelling proposed to be in the space that used to be commercial? So the office
Right.
space is remaining the same, or was it divided up differently?
The way it was shown is all office space at this present time. I'm not for sure if the area being proposed for the living area is the commercial space. The applicant is here, the owner applicant, Nora Lynch. She may be able to explain that to us.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much all commercial space. So
Okay.
we, you know, so that's what it is. But apparently everything has like a permit for commercial, so everything's residential as far as was with Mr. Canny. And so this would be kind of modifying and would go under the ADU under 900 square feet or under. So, and he would want more specific plans, but there's no point of doing more specific detailed plans unless we have a sign off on the Board of Health. So I would believe it would go under the ADU, by right ADU piece of it, but it's retail and commercial mixed.
So let me
Mark,
pick
I
up.
guess
Go ahead, Daryl. I think that was.
I was
it
asking
was not
from
what
the
Daryl was
standpoint
asking.
of, yeah, there was 200 gallons per day minimum allocated for office space, and then another 200 allocated for retail.
That
I'm
is
just trying
correct.
to figure out, is that office space, like if whatever was there before has been divided up differently, does that 200 still work for the office space that is currently there?
And the original design was 75 gallons per 1,000 square feet of either commercial or office space.
Oh,
So
okay.
right now, according to the assessors, they have 2,642 square feet. I don't have I'm going off memory, but I have the record right here. I want to be sure the board of that number. Yes, 2,642 square feet of space exist at the building. And I am not for sure how it's been divided since the original septic plan, but the engineer, Paul Saunier, had designed it at the minimum for each. That would be, the state requires that you design at least 200 gallons per day minimum for either office space or commercial, and he designed it for 400 gallons per day.
Okay, so I guess, and given that gallonage per square feet, that can be calculated to assure that the office space is not using an amount that would make trouble for the
Correct. If they went over the 200 gallons per day for either one of them, they would now be going over for one of the two categories. But presently, it's showing. I showed it all as office space, and even at that, they're right at the 198 gallons for if it's all office space
Okay.
at 2,642 square feet, they would require 198.5 gallons, and that is very close to the 200 minimum required. How it got divided back when it was designed, I'm not for sure. But that's how and it's being shown on the actual septic plan of the actual design, and it was designed for the two minimums. Septic system was put in and approved. There were some minor needs that they hadn't updated until later after 2007, but it is compliant. It does have its certificate. It was issued, the final one was issued February 14th, 2013. They had just paperwork here. They had conditions that were corrected on October of 2021. But the system was put into effect on February 14th, 2013. 2021, they finalized the conditions, and there it is right there. And you'll see at the bottom near the signatures and under the date when it was finalized. And so presently, because it's all office space and what we discussed at land planning, this cannot be considered an accessory dwelling unit. This is considered, as noted before, a living area being added to the office space. It's not right now residential or any way living quarters, so that's the way the
Right.
building permit has been noted, is to create a living space within a non-residential unit.
Okay, and that's where I got, thank you, Mark, because I just heard a couple hours ago about that. So I was trying to get more clarification from
That's
Danny
Yeah.
about whether it's an ADU or special permit.
Yeah.
But
Good.
either way, so that's why I'm a little fuzzy on it. And by the way, the thing in 2021 is when I purchased the property, and what they wanted to do was kind of add where the pipe was sticking out of the ground, add a little bit more protection of that pipe. So that's what we did.
Thank you.
Mm.
So the way I'm presenting it to the board is as discussed, not as an accessory dwelling unit,
Okay.
because it's not living quarters there. If it was, then it could be considered an ADU, accessory dwelling unit. At this present time, we get to the same point as a living quarters. Living quarters can be either an accessory dwelling unit or considered a living quarters. The building commissioner did note today that it would require his review and a special permit based on the fact it's that living space within a non-residential unit, but you still get what you need to get, and that's the living area. It's just defined differently and has different requirements based on how it's being defined by the
Okay.
building commissioner.
Thank you, Mark. That new to me today.
That's
Just a couple
it was
hours
new
ago.
to me too.
Okay.
We learned a lot today.
We
With
did. Well, I still have a lot to learn.
Yeah, and we are learning and through the process as well. But in review, it was determined to be just creating another living space within a non-residential unit.
Okay.
And you can refer to Chris on these special permit. He'll walk you through that, he said.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I think to go back to Daryl's question for clarification, if we can pull up the floor plan, please. Thank you. So this is the proposed. And I think what Daryl was trying to clarify is it looks like the retail area is being removed and replaced with the one-bedroom residential unit. And that the office space is remaining the same as it exists today. Is that accurate?
Yes, and one thing that we might tweak, and I would have to come back again, is I was asking Chris because this I just became aware of this is oh, I keep thinking you can see my cursor. Sorry, you can't.
Where do you want me to point?
Well, the retail space is right there where there's that black line there. And again, it's very cursory drawing because there was no point of hiring professional architects unless I knew I could actually do this. So it was this kind of a sketch. Would be adding a shower where to the left now, and having the retail and then that part right there as part of the accessory dwelling unit. We might end up tweaking it that it's depending on, what we can do, is actually have the two rooms coming in the side. I wish I could have a cursor, sorry. But those two rooms right there, and then that middle room would make probably more sense to have that be the living area. There's plenty of egress there too. And then Chris was saying I could have the retail, which is only very part-time, open, as long as they have, I think hopefully I'm quoting him correctly, about 300 feet from the bathroom that's upstairs. They could use the bathroom upstairs, go outside to go inside another way. Anyway, I'm possibly tweaking it. If we have to come back, we'll come back. But the main thing is what, is getting the approval from the Board of Health.
So the reason we are going through the square footage for the office use is under Title 5. So under, I'll give you the section. It is 310 CMR 15.203, which is design criteria. It calls out for office space in particular. You are required to have 75 gallons a day of flow for every 1,000 square feet of office space. And
Uh-huh.
there is a minimum of 200 gallons per day. And so right now, as this is proposed, I did a rough calculation of these rooms. It's under the 2,000 square feet. And so the allotment of 200 gallons per day is completely appropriate for as it is proposed here.
Okay.
So the assumption is then the 200, and this is on, could you skip over, Sarah, to the COC? Just quick. Sorry, thank you. And here on the COC, it calls out 200 for retail. And Mark, it's the same, hang on, let me just pull this up in Title 5 to make sure it's the same number.
Yes, it is. It's 75.
It's the same, it's for 70, okay, so it's the same. So he broke it up this way when he called it out, but it's the same. So I think what we want to make sure is that we have the accurate amount of square feet being used for the office retail combined. And then looking to make sure that what we have remaining is enough to cover the 110 gallons of flow for the one bedroom residential unit.
So if it was, I'm just kind of making, if it's what's the minimum maximum for
No maximum.
okay, I'm just saying, what's
Yeah,
the
the
square foot? We
minimum
have
is
2,600 square feet. So if I have 900 square feet of residential, is that fine the 26, so 1,900?
Yeah, you would be under, exactly. So you would be under the 2,000. So we are required, regardless of if you had 50 square feet of office space, we would still be required to have 200 gallons per day of flow for the system under Title 5. But so anything, once you have that minimum, then we look at for every 1,000 square feet, 75 gallons per day are required. So if you have, let's say, 2,000 square feet, which I know it's not quite that, you would need to have 150, but since the minimum is 200, we go to the 200. So we're just trying to make sure that there isn't.
So I have, just say I have say it's 2,000 of office space and then 600 of residential, making
Yep.
up 2,600. Is that
Yep.
sufficient? That would be
Sufficient.
okay.
That
Yeah,
would be
then I'll
sufficient
make
for a one bedroom. Can we clarify the status of the basement space?
Oh, it's totally, part of it's dirt and it's completely unfinished. Can take-
Completely unfinished. Okay, excellent. That's good to establish.
And if I can add, the
Not
state,
livable.
sorry. The state does allow for a smaller amount of bedrooms than three. When it comes to that in Title V, if you're designing a septic system, you have to design at a minimum of three bedrooms. But in this case, we're not designing a septic system because it already was designed for commercial and office space. So we're looking at the capacity, and the capacity isn't based on square footage of the apartment. It's based on 110 gallons per bedroom. So that's what I would be looking at to make sure there's enough capacity. And as noted, it obviously appears that we're going to be under 200 gallons per day. Might it be commercial or office space? And then with the 110, you'd have sufficient capacity. But I would suggest the state does have a requirement that you deed record anything under three bedrooms. Might it be a two-bedroom facility or a one-bedroom facility that it be
One
deed
bedroom,
recorded?
yeah.
Just so it's known that this is under the required design flow, but it's allowed as long as it's deed recorded. So I would just wanted to note that.
Terrific.
But to clarify here, so in looking at this, if there are 400 gallons of flow for the system, and there is a minimum requirement of 200 gallons of flow for the office/retail space, that only leaves capacity for residential use at 200 gallons. So
Correct.
within that, you could not have two bedrooms worth of flow and the 2,000 square feet or less of office space, retail space. So what that would mean, basically, Nora, is if you ever were to decide that you wanted to expand this from a one-bedroom residential unit to a two-bedroom residential unit, that would not exist within the capacity of the system.
Okay.
And instead, you would, I mean, if you were going to leave it as it is, you would have to convert over all of the office space to residential. And I think the history of the building is it was once all residential.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh.
So that would be one of the options here.
Okay.
And so I think to make sure, I think there's a couple of questions. I think Mark brought out one of the questions is deed recording this as a one bedroom. I think my question to the board is, I don't know that I feel that a deed recording, I don't understand if a deed recording is really necessary, because I think that if the property owner, whoever that would be, in the future wanted to convert this over to entirely residential and remove all of the retail and office space, they would be able to do that, in which case they could accommodate a three-bedroom home. But I wanted to go to, and Mark, if there is something that I'm missing in Title V about if we're approving a one-bedroom use, because it's not, the system already exists, right? We're looking at
Correct. And
use. So that's why I'm trying to understand this nuance here of whether or not a deed recording is necessary, because I don't want to lock this property in with a deed recording when it could potentially change use entirely.
yeah, that's a good point. You would have to go back and to the registry and change the deeds if indeed it was switched back to residential. The one good thing about this property is it exists presently. It's not new construction. It was there as residential, switched over to commercial office space, and now a mix of the two. So that's a very important fact to note, because if this was a new building being built, they would not have been allowed waivers and variances to regulations as was this present septic system that exists there. But again, it's all based on the fact that this was an existing facility that had a replacement septic system put in. So, yeah, deed recording may, it being a living unit, it will need to go through special permit with the ZBA. I don't know how often. That's why I referred Nora to Chris Canny, our building commissioner slash zoning board authority agent, I guess. And so that would also pass by the Board of Health. We see those ZBA petitions on a regular basis. So that might be enough control, I guess I'll call it, to oversee it on a regular basis, where this would be unique to its own way because it's being added into commercial office space, not residential space. If it was a residence, then we would look at this as an ADU, an accessory dwelling unit, but it's
Okay.
not.
Yeah, and that's new to me just a couple
Yeah.
hours ago. So thank
And it
you.
was news to me too today at the land planning meeting.
Okay.
We're all trying to figure out ADUs. We
Yeah,
are.
we are.
So to check in then with the rest of the board, for the rest of the board, does anyone have a strong opinion one way or another on whether or not this property requires a one-bedroom deed recording?
It seems like it's almost superfluous, that we don't really need it, given the way, the structure, the way it's gonna be planned, and like you said, even if it does become all residential, you really wouldn't have to make any changes for that. So I don't see a need for a deed recording. But I just wanted to be clear, there's no changes to the outside of the house. It's just the
Nope.
same footprint. Everything's being done on the inside.
Same footprint. The only thing that I would have to talk to Chris Canny about is making sure it's up to code as far as, firewalls and things like that, what I need to do for that. So I will be in touch with him, obviously. So there's no change to the footprint. We're not taking down walls. The only thing we're really doing is that half bath that I think at one point was a full bath. And previous ownership took out the full bath and just made it a half bath. It's kind of the original. You can see the old heating and everything. So it would be that would be the one kind of part of a wall that would be incorporating into a bathroom.
Okay, and between 2013 when the septic was approved and now there's no other changes, Mark, that would need to be taken into consideration?
Not that I'm aware of. I believe it's always been commercial
Mhm.
office space since the septic was put in back in
Oh, yeah.
2000.
Yeah. It's been that.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Good clarifying point, Steve.
And it's a good point Steve brought out too. If this was in any way going past the present walls and foundation, DEP noted then it would be under a different circumstance. But because it's staying within the confines of the building, that would be sufficient.
There's no additional square footage being constructed.
No.
Other board members on the issue of the deed recording?
Yeah, so from what I'm hearing, it's sounding to me, Julie, that we really wouldn't need a deed recording because, yeah, changes, should a future owner or current owner want to add bedrooms, that would impact the system and we'd see the plans again.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. And if there were going to be additional changes of use beyond what is being proposed here, that would certainly have to come back to the board.
Mhm.
So we'd see it. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay. So
Because it might be that I'm going to talk
That's
to
pretty
Chris.
much where I thought.
Yeah.
Rebecca, do you concur or have differing thoughts?
No, I think if it's coming back to the board for change of use anyway, then I'm not sure that it's necessary to do a deed recording.
Okay. The two other points I think we should review with this. This is a Presby system. We just approved a Presby system at our last meeting. And as we noted, the state does allow for the use of a garbage grinder with a Presby system. However, the board for that previous system, and I would recommend it for this, is that we would strongly recommend you do not install a garbage grinder
Oh,
in
yeah,
order
don't
to
worry.
preserve the integrity of the septic system.
I am not a garbage grinder believer in the least bit.
Okay.
So
Um, that
that will not happen. Don't worry.
okay. Um, and then I think the other question for the board is when we have, and we don't often see buildings that have a change of use. This is a little unique since it is both in an RA and a business general district. Do we need a Title V inspection to ensure the sound functioning of the system as it stands today? I think, Mark, you had a conversation with DEP to just clarify that. Is that correct?
Yes, excuse me. With the change of use, if the septic system was only 2 years old, then the certificate of compliance would work for a Title V inspection. But this is one question I didn't get a chance to ask Nora. But when you purchased the property, Nora, was that 2 years ago or so? Did they do a Title V?
They did have a Title V done when I purchased it. Yes, it was done. However, I wonder if but if you notice that 2021 was a certificate of compliance. So I
Well,
just
that
have to
was
refresh my memory, believe it or not, on my own thing. It's like
sure. Well, if
um,
yeah,
but I
no, and
believe that
that's
Title V was done, and then we also had to clean up because anyway, for whatever reason, I don't think there was, how sometimes there was a conditional certificate of compliance when it was done way back when. So, but I'm sure it was the Title V done because I had a bank involved and everything else. So
okay.
I
So
can
we
get
can
that. I'm sure I
research.
have that. Yeah, it's right there at the town.
Yeah, if we have something within 2 years, it should be sufficient.
It would be 4 years. It would have been in 2021. So if I
Oh,
need to do a new Title V, I just had Scott Septic did pumping for my other properties, including that one. So I guess I can have them do a Title V again if I
yeah,
need.
that would be important to have an
Mhm.
up-to-date Title V
All
inspection
right,
report due to the fact it's a change of use.
happy to do that.
And that's just to ensure that if there was any issues with the functioning of the system, you did not go and spend all that time on your building and remodeling
Absolutely.
to then find out that you had a different issue.
Mm.
Yeah.
Um, Okay, so I
Happy to
think,
make that part of it.
um, and so I think we've kind of, we didn't call out explicitly, the, why we're calling this a residential unit and not an accessory dwelling unit. But just to be clear, there is no dwelling unit as it stands, since this is office retail space. And so you cannot have an accessory to a dwelling unit in the absence of a dwelling unit.
Makes sense to me. I just,
Um,
yep.
But you can have a, whether you call it an apartment or a residential unit, you still can have the same thing. It's just under
Hmm.
a different name. So I think some of that should be just cleaned up for clarity on both
Absolutely.
on this proposed schematic that we see in front of us. We can, again, you can call it a residential unit, one bedroom residential unit. You can call it a one bedroom apartment. We're just going to remove the language of ADU. And looking at the building permit, it looks like the mention of ADU is on there. I would just ask, and I think this is probably done by the building inspector, that is cleaned up. It's a little further down the first page, Sarah.
Yeah, no, that definitely needs to be cleaned up because
There, thank you, pause, Sarah. Pause.
yeah, I did not do that. I originally had thought that it should, I was told or advised that I should do it as an ADU, but now again, just finding out the last couple of hours that
Yeah.
technically it's not going to be an ADU. That's fine.
So the live work unit or the residential office unit, whatever, they're the same thing. Just keep that consistent throughout the application.
Okay.
Board members, further questions, comments, or concerns before we have a motion? Let me see for hands. Nora, do you have any additional questions?
No, so I'll go ahead and I believe I'm probably going to have to come back to show you the exact square footage. And if it changes a little bit on, like if I keep the retail, I guess it's commercial retail, it doesn't matter. But if I keep the interior, but it won't all be the same first floor. And then I'll get more square footage. When I come back with all the more official plans, I think Chris really wanted more drawn out plans by the builder, which is understandable.
Okay, so your intention is to slightly tweak the proposed schematic here, and then
Exactly.
you will bring that back to us. And so then, Mark, process wise, we do not need to have a motion on this tonight. Nora was just coming to us to get a sense of the board, and so that she can go back with this information and make adjustments as she decides. Is that right?
Exactly. And once the building permit part of it's updated, then I'll take a look at it then. And Chris knows about this. As I said, he was at a meeting with us today. So I think this will all go in the correct direction and we'll move from there.
Okay, that's terrific.
I got my
Okay,
fingers
so
crossed on that Title V. If you've had it pumped and serviced, you should be okay. But
yeah.
we wouldn't need for them to do a full Title V inspection.
I'll schedule that. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I would have to have that done in hand anyway before you vote, correct?
Before I can approve it, and I have a feeling
Okay.
the board sees this is common. Once the board sees a request, they usually finalize it at the end as well. So it would come back to the board once it's all
Right.
finalized.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Daryl, you have a comment question?
Yeah, I don't think you're going to need this information necessarily, but you have with the 110 gallons that you need for the one bedroom, that leaves you 290 gallons. You could do almost 4,000 square feet of commercial space at the 75 gallons per 1,000 square feet. So you've got, I think, a lot of wiggle room there
Okay, thank you.
for how you
Thanks.
lay things out.
But we have to be cautious that we don't jump into new construction. We stay with the same floor plan that existed so that
Oh,
the
yeah.
variances that were granted were for a replacement repair and not for new construction. That's the only comment I would like to make on that.
Yeah, I think that is critical. All right, so Nora, we are looking for a Title V inspection, and we are looking for an update in the language to remove ADU and replace it with residential unit or one bedroom apartment. And then we're just going to look for your finalized floor plans.
Okay. Thank you very much. Have a great evening.
Thank you so much. Take
Right.
care.
Bye.
All right, why don't we finish out our agent's business?
Sure, and just so
For
the,
155 Maple, were you
yeah, I
anticipating
did
the
speak,
homeowners?
I'm sorry, I did speak with the homeowner. There's two homeowners, it's a husband and wife, and I spoke to the wife last week. I left a business card at the door because I wasn't getting responses to the request through emails, and the business cards seemed to catch their attention, and they're very nice to talk with. And I explained to them that, the house was sold to them in 2024, May of 2024, and that unless they do a Title V, we have to assume the system, not assume, we presume the system has failed because that was the direction I got from DEP. I had to reach out to DEP on this one because I never had this situation before of a known changeover. And how this got noticed to us was back at the end of June. There was some conservation work that had to be reviewed, and that's when I found out that the facility was no longer owned by the previous owner, who we had dealt with many times on beaver issues down. There's a pond behind this property. With that said, thankfully they did call last week. I actually had a conversation with the husband on the property, but I think it wasn't misunderstanding. He just didn't understand what we were looking for. But he did say they were going to have an inspection. And when I met with him, that was in September, and hadn't heard anything since. But as of Monday, a Title V inspector, who they noted, had called our office for the historical records. But I was hoping they'd be here tonight. But I think what's most important, we keep them on track and give them a deadline for that Title V inspection. And I would ask that the board may consider December 31st as the deadline for the Title V inspection. That will also give me the opportunity to guide them to what they may need to do. If it passes, then they'll be okay. They'll be limited to what they can do in there because we have no records of design flow, so they'll have to stay with what they have if the septic system passes. If the septic system fails, then they'll have up till May to put in a new septic system, do the soil testing, and then put a replacement septic system in. If they need additional time, then I'll let them know it would have to come back in front of the Board of Health for review. I was hoping they'd be here tonight. The person I spoke with, the wife said she would be here, and I sent her the agenda, but maybe there's some misunderstanding. But I would ask the board consider a deadline of December 31st of this year to have the Title V inspection in.
And then, Mark, just because we don't see this very often where we have a property transfer without a Title V inspection. What is the enforcement mechanism here? Since we have in the absence of an inspection, we have a presumed failure.
Correct.
What is our enforcement action at that point?
We would order them to replace the system in accordance with Title V based on the fact it failed, and we would use the language in Title V that says you have to replace it within 2 years unless it's breaking out of ground or backing into the house. Then they don't have that time limit. But we can use all of Title V's requirements and have to presume it's failed if they don't present a Title V. Then an order would go out. I would pass it by the board first just to make sure you're satisfied with the order that I'm presenting and send it off to them. But I'm hoping we don't have to get to that route. They actually started working on it this week at the beginning of the week. So I'm hoping they'll do the Title V inspection and then maybe a letter of direction would need to go out on if it needs to be replaced.
Go ahead, Steve.
Thanks. So Mark, I read through the emails and I'm still confused. Is it a cesspool or is it a septic?
Well, we have some drawings. They're not engineered drawings. And it appears to be what we would call a conventional system. It appears to have a septic tank. And these drawings were done, I think, during the time when there was a beaver concern down there and the location. It could have been done for an addition as well. And then a leaching field after that. So the state, in their own ways, would call that a conventional system, even if the original septic tank was a cesspool that was seized up and they put a leaching field after it, they would still consider that a suitable conventional system to suffice for the present house, but not for any additions, as long as it passes all the Title V inspection requirements. Most of them don't, but we'll wait, give them the benefit of the doubt. You never know. It still could be functioning, but it is antiquated, if that's the way I would describe it. It's an antiquated system.
Okay, and the 2-year time period, when would that begin? Would that go back to 2024?
Yes, from the date of sale.
Okay,
And we have that information. We received that from the assessor last week.
got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so Mark, are you looking for a motion from us, or just what is the action you were looking for? It sounds
I would
like
ask the board make a motion to determine the deadline for the Title V inspection. And I suggest this month's going to be cold, but the ground still can be dug through, especially over a septic system. So I would suggest by the end of this month, by December 31st of this year, or by January 1st, however you want to do that. But I think December 31st is appropriate.
Just for clarification purposes, because we're seeing this right now with a couple other properties, Mark, do you want us to have the report by that date, or do you want them to show us that someone's been there by that date?
The report's most important, but that's a good question, and thank you for that, because without the report, I'm still at a loss, and that could take another few months. So I would ask that the board vote to require the full Title V inspection report by December 31st of this year.
Okay. Do you want us to put any additional language about the presumed failure or what comes next, or just?
Well, yeah, you
leave it
could
at
note that if it has failed, they will need to replace it by May of 2026. I don't have the exact date in May, but it was May of 2024.
And if they don't get it inspected by December 31st?
Then I have to issue an order, and I already noted in one of the emails, we don't want to go the legal route if we don't have to, but we will have to, and it's kind of a fair warning that we would not want to go that route. I think it's at the end, but again, it took several emails to get to their attention on this. So I've been trained that when you're not getting the attention of anyone that might be in violation, you do have to note that if it's not complied with, that legal action could take place.
Okay,
And
so
that's the last thing I would like to do. I'd rather have them comply.
So that timetable and the dates that we just talked about, would those be in the letter going out to them? So it's very
Yeah, and actually, I'll try to have a discussion with the homeowner, but as well as an email. Everything's best in writing.
right.
And try to reach out to them and explain, you took the first step, you had your Title V inspector call, but now they have to get out there and do the inspection and create a report.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Further questions? I will take a stab at a motion and then welcome friendly amendments to clean up my language. Do I have a motion to require a Title V inspection report for 155 Maple be received by the Board of Health by December 31st of 2025, and until that time, the system is presumed to be in failure?
So moved.
Seconded.
Further discussion? Hearing none.
Daryl Beardsley, aye.
Steve Constantine, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Thank you.
Motion.
Sometimes it does take a vote of the board, unfortunately, when it gets to this point. And I appreciate your support.
Absolutely. Thank you for bringing this to us.
You're welcome.
Hopefully we can assist these homeowners.
Yes, by all means.
All right, let's see. Hang on, briefly lost my agenda. Okay. Why don't we go down to other business? We have both our budget review for fiscal year 27. We have our meeting schedule review, and we have continued discussion on the proposed changes to our fee schedule Sarah, since many of these are your topics, do you have a preference which we take next?
Not really. I see Tom Trainer's here. I didn't know if he had one specific he wanted to be present for. We could do that one first, or if he's just here to hang out.
Thank you. I'd leave it up to you guys, although I was interested in the budget,
Oh.
budget part.
All right, then we can start with the budget, I guess.
And so I will kick over this discussion to Steve, Daryl, and Sarah, who have been working incredibly hard on getting this proposal put together. So go ahead. And I think, Sarah, if you want to do the screen share, or Steve, whoever has it ready.
I have it up. I just want to close everything out so I'm not accidentally showing everyone all of my tabs. That
I
would
think
be
Sarah and Steve are going to be taking the credit. I have not seen this yet.
Well, thank you, Sarah and Steve. It's never an easy lift, and it's a long process.
Do you want me to share what was in the folder, the budget?
Sure, whichever one of you wants to share it. We just need to pull it up on the screen.
Yeah, sorry, I was just pulling up the, I have a presentation that explains what Steve and I did
Oh, okay, okay.
As well.
Go right ahead.
So I'm going to start with sort of the what we'll be sending to the finance department. So this is our budget request for the fiscal year 2027, assuming it's approved by the board. A little bit of background, the way that the timeline is working this year is that these budgets are due to the finance department by the end of business on Friday, December 5th. And then there are scheduled meetings between department heads and whoever on their committees are working on the budget, and the town administration and the director of the finance department me and Steve will be meeting with Jeremy, Jayan, and Deb on December 12th. So that's next Friday to review our request. So in general, we do see a fairly significant, or what looks like a significant increase from our FY26 budget request to our FY27 budget request at 14.84%. However, that is going to be explained in great detail in the presentation. So before I move on to the presentation, does anybody have any questions about this right here? Okay.
Oh, one quick question. What does the very bottom line, public health initiative?
So in the past, there's been public health initiative has budgeted. The last time it was budgeted was in 2022, and it was budgeted for $1,000. However, it was never used, but the $200 here will be allocated towards education materials, really community facing events, similar to the emergency preparedness event that we did, other things of that nature. So pretty much anything that's community facing would fall under public health initiative that doesn't fall under office supplies and things of that nature.
Excellent.
So
Thank you. Go ahead with your presentation, Sarah.
sure thing. Okay, so we can't see you guys anymore. So if anyone has a question, feel free to just stop me at any time. Like that, I can't see. Okay, there we go. Okay. So this is what our budget is in greater detail if the other image was too small.
We are seeing the same screen that we were looking at a minute ago. Did you change your screen?
Yes.
Now we see a presentation.
Okay,
Excellent.
perfect. So this is all the same information that we were just looking at. And I'm just going to go into greater detail about everything. So these personnel are getting their salary increases will be reflected by the cost of living adjustment that was determined by the advisory board, which was a 3.25% increase. So all of these stipends and or salaries for the proposed FY27 salary. So the permanent part-time is our administrative assistant, animal inspector. She gets paid on a quarterly stipend. The burial agent at this time is the town clerk. We are in process of hiring the supplemental health agent, and then I am the administrator. So now we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of requesting more for 2 hourly positions. So the first is the Board of Health agent. So on the screen here, we see the FY23, 24, and 25 breakdown. So this first column here is what was requested from the Board of Health, from the advisory board. This is, and every year it gets approved. And then this is the actual. And this is the hourly of the health agent, which is reflected in the cost of living adjustment increase every year. Then I calculated the annual hours by dividing the hourly by the actual. And then I went ahead and calculated the average hours per week by dividing the annual hours by 52 or 52.2. I don't have that number on the top of my head, but this was a pretty simplified average. And for context, the Board of Health agent is contracted for less than 20 hours per week. And so they were able to stay under that for. So now let's get into FY26. We requested $49,455. That was what was approved. This is the hourly rate this year, $70.65 per hour. So year to date, this was as of November 20th. We've had one pay period since, so this is a little bit higher now. However, the calculation still stands that we have worked an average of 17.6 hours per week for a total payout of $22,000. Assuming that the average hours per week remains consistent, as our health agent has demonstrated several times that they are very consistent with the hours they work, we're looking at about $65,165.72 at the end of this fiscal year. So how did we get to $69,394.47? I calculated the average hours per year from the past 4 fiscal years, including FY26 is expected, calculated the average hours per week, and then using the cost of living adjustment, calculated the FY27 hourly rate to be $72.95, then multiplied $72.95 by 18 by 52.2. The reason it's 52.2 is because of how fiscal years work. Some years your salary is calculated by 51.8, and some years it's 52.2. So this year it's 52.2. That was provided to me by the finance department. And so that's how we got to $69,394.47. So there's some more information about this at the end. Now we go to the food and camp inspector. Again, I did the same exact math here that I did with the health agent in terms of what was requested, approved, how much we actually spent, the hourly rate for this position, the total annual hours and average hours per week. For those of you who do not know, the food and camp inspector is contracted to work anywhere between 2 and 8 hours per week. So working an average of 5 hours per week is well within their allotted time. So now we're in FY26. We've requested $7,903 at $56.45 per hour. The year-to-date average hours per week is 4, so on the lower end. And we can expect a payout of about $11,814.99. Now, this is important to note. The food inspector does have a little bit more variance in terms of their hours per week based on the season. So we have a busier season where we have more temporary food permits that come in. So I feel as though the average hours per week that's represented here is a little bit on the low end, and we will expect that to go up to be in the 5 range. However, I didn't want to make any assumptions, which is why I calculated the average hours worked per year from FY23 to the expected for FY26, and the average hours per week for the same time period, calculated the hourly rate the same way as well. And that is how we ended up at the FY27 request for $15,211. So now we're going to go into our expenses. These two line items are decreasing. Again, I really just went over the average for FY23 to FY25 of how much we were spending on both of these. I did the math on our phone bill because I pay that regularly, and we're not going to be spending $2,400 on it. So we don't need to be budgeting for that when we can allocate those funds elsewhere where they're actually going to get spent out of. And this is how I calculated expected for FY26 in terms of office supplies. These two line items are being removed completely. So meetings and seminars between FY23 and FY25, we have spent $0 in seminars, and that's because our shared services agreement completely covers all of our travel expenses for meetings and seminars. So it's the MHOA conference and the MEHA conference and the MAHB conference. So all of those are completely covered. And there are also other opportunities for conferences like the APHA conference or anything else like that where we can get sponsored to go. So we don't need to be allocating any money for that when it can be completely subsidized outside of our budget. And this is a bit of a point of contention. So the maintenance and disposal of kiosk, we've been budgeting $2,200 approximately since we installed it in 2022. And the only time that has ever been spent, the $290 that you see here, is actually from a computer that was purchased in 2024. And it was just that line item. So there was one purchase that was made with that money. And it had nothing to do with the kiosk. So the reason that I'm sort of taking out this number is according to my calculations, according to my discussions with the police department, and just general gauged usage of the shards disposal kiosk, we have 7 remaining pickups that are complementary with the kiosk that we purchased. And assuming the kiosk needs to be emptied twice a year, which according to my lengthy discussions with the police department and also with the with the company, we will likely not need to pay for a pickup until January 1st of 2029. And what I don't have listed here is that the pickup will only cost $95. And the expected maintenance of the kiosk at any given time is a battery change. And it's just 3 triple-D batteries, like the big ones, which we actually have an immense stock of, which I did not know. So the maintenance for the kiosk is very low and minimal. So if we were to budget anything for this line item, I would suggest we budget only $200 because that would cover 2 pickups plus any need for batteries. Additionally, I am under the impression that we might be able to use our opioid abatement funds for any unexpected maintenance of the kiosk. However, I'm still waiting to hear back from our technical assistant partner, Rise, because there is a little bit of confusion as to if you are able to pay for the maintenance of the kiosk, because you can buy one with it, but it's unsure if you can do the upkeep with it. So I'm waiting to hear back from them. I spoke with them at the conference earlier this month. However, I still just haven't heard back from them. So these are the line items that are increasing. The public health initiative, as I mentioned, that's for other health education initiatives. If we wanted to do another program similar to the emergency preparedness program, We had a lot of feedback from the community survey, which, side note, I am working on the report for you guys and should hopefully have that to you by the end of next week, actually. We had the most responses were for more public health education initiatives. So whether that be about wells and septics or just about general health outcomes, there's a lot more we can do if we just had a little bit of funding dedicated to it, whether that be actually doing physical handouts, printouts, whatever that may be. Having the extra $200 could be really helpful in the end. Travel, lodging, and meals, that's simply for the mileage reports for both the administrator and the agent. And I have a list of the year to date as of 11/20 for the mileage reports, and I calculated the average. Previously, this wasn't a line item, and it was just being spent under miscellaneous spending, and that didn't make any sense to me because it is something that we do every month. So what's going up a lot are the dues, subscriptions, and memberships, because we have recently been accepted to join the remainder of the land use department in using AI for minutes. And that subscription is $1,200 per year. So it averages out to $100 a month for 12 months. And I cannot explain in words truly how amazing this is. The time it has saved for me, for the rest of the team, for just in general efficiency of minutes is just mind-blowing. It's great. I love it. I don't want to give it up. We will be spending this money this year. And because we are not allocating anything out of the Sharps and Disposals Kiosk Fund, I did check. It is okay that we use it for that. So I checked, because it's like, as long as at the end of the day our total is the same, they don't mind as much. And then another new line item that I will be proposing this year that has never been a line item before is continuing education and certifications for both the administrator and the agent, for recertification of credentials required to complete the job to the best of their ability. And then in FY27, it is likely that, it's weird to refer to myself in the third person, that I will be taking the registered environmental health specialist exam. So I did include that as well. For reference, the recertification cost for the certified health officer is $78. So that's both Mark and myself. And then the RS is just for Mark, which is another $78. And then the test is about $250 to $300, depending on how and when you take it. And this will also cover any additional materials. So if we wanted to join any like online classes, actually Tom gave me a really great resource called privatewelllessons.org, and I've been taking some of the free classes, but they do offer paid classes. And that could be, again, just really helpful moving forward. So these are the general differences of the budget. Again, we're looking at about a 15% increase. These were the overages from FY23 to 25. And it's important to note that in FY25, only half of the administrator's salary was spent. Assuming that the administrator was not included in the budget and nothing was spent on the administrator, FY25 would have been nearly 60% over budget. That can be attributed to the contracting of a supplemental health agent, but also every other line item we did go over in the end. And with our current trajectory, we're expected to go about 10% over budget this year. So as I previously mentioned, this is the mileage we have right now. We're at 290. It is a little higher because for me, I went to 2 conferences thus far this year. And so I did get reimbursed for those miles for driving there. One was in Plymouth, one was in Springfield. The way that works is you either pick your home address or work address, whichever one is closer, and that is what you use to calculate your mileage. So from my home to Plymouth is shorter than from work to Plymouth, so I use that one. And from my home to Springfield is longer than from work to Springfield, so I used Town Hall. And then these are all for inspections, work, soil testing and whatnot that the agent does. And these are reviewed every month by the assessor, and they have all been approved. And this is also something I really wanted to bring up, is that for the FY26 expected and the FY27 request, and the percent difference really does show that we're not asking for more money than we've been taking in terms of cost of living adjustment, except for this 2% with the Board of Health agent, because there is a more variability in the average number of hours worked right now for the health agent, just because different years have different numbers of projects. However, I think that this is generally pretty fair for what we've been going through in terms of our budget. So I feel like this just shows that we're really not asking for more money than we are going to be spending this year in comparison, especially because we will be decreasing so much of our line item spending. We're decreasing about 15% of our line item spending. So that is the end of the explanation, Steve. I don't know if I missed anything. I kind of was rambling a lot there. So if you wanted to add anything.
No, I thought that was great. And again, Sarah did all the heavy lifting with this, putting this together. And I think she did a great job. I guess the two things that I wanted to bring up was the Sharps kiosk thing, the 2200. I was kind of hoping to leave that in there, and maybe that's the corporate guy inside of me, that you don't give back budget once you get it. But I'm fine with letting that go. And then the second thing that I think this highlights is the need that we need to do something with a supplemental health agent, and how that's going to get structured when folks ask for that, how that gets paid for. I think that's something that we really need to kind of work through, how that's going to be presented. And of course, we're going to get the approval from we need to get the approval from the select board as well with that. But those are the two things that I have. But otherwise, yeah, I think Sarah did a great job with this. I know she got really excited when she found out there was a wallaby in town. But yeah, it was I think it's a good process she put together.
I will say, in response to you, I know after our last meeting, we talked about keeping the Sharp kiosk in there. But then I found out how much OpenGov costs per year, and I figured they might be more willing to give us that money if I take away the
No,
kiosk.
I agree. Yeah.
But I think it's not a terrible idea to say that we will be hitting a certain number of pickups per year. I just don't think it needs to be 2,200. We can offset the 1,200 for OpenGov and the 500 for the continuing education certifications, and I think that ends up being $520 for the kiosk.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I agree.
So we can move some stuff around as well.
Who wants to take the first round of questions?
Don't
I'm looking at you,
many
Daryl.
questions. I don't have many questions because this is a lot like what we've evaluated in many prior years, particularly about that we knew that costs were going up. I think it's still worth giving it a shot. We've always been pushed back on, no matter what the data was that we had, and we approached it in different ways every year. So, but that is what's happening. Things are taking more time. There are more duties for the Board of Health. Good luck. I think the things that they always will ask about, they're going to look at that percent increase column, and they're going to want to know why. why. So just be ready for that. And
And again, Daryl, I think the key thing is we're being a lot more realistic this time. Instead of just asking for less and going over budget, this way we're looking at it, we're saying, we're trying to be.
all right, that's where that's where you need to understand. We have gone in with what we felt were more realistic projections every time. Because we did the same thing. Look back over the last number of years, what was the trend, all the data on how many permits were coming in each year. And we did not choose to go lower. We were eventually asked to go back to a
Right.
lower number.
Right.
So it's an interesting dynamic. And I understand some of the reasons for doing it, unless you're absolutely sure that the trend of number of permits per year and amount of work is going to be the same, they preferred to stay low and then supplement it from free cash as needed. Just letting you know.
Yeah. No.
It might change this year, though. One never knows.
And there's this, when you look at the actuals for the 3-year look back, where we see, particularly for the food camp inspector, that what we actually spend is at least twice, not quite 3 times what is budgeted. And that is a service demand, profession. Like we don't choose the number of food trucks that are going to come to town. We have to respond as they apply. And we see a pretty consistent trend with the number of permits that are being requested and the amount of time that it's taking him to complete his inspections and to review those permit requests. And the same thing goes for the agent. While there's certainly a little bit of variation from year to year, it's still holding generally steady. And yes, in terms of what I agree with you, Steve. It will be nice when we have a supplemental health agent that is not a corporate entity, just because it will be gentler on the budget. And I think we are working diligently to find that person. Unfortunately, they just don't seem to be applying right now. So that's where we're at. I think a couple of questions just to kind of follow up would be for the covering of the registration for conferences that currently shared services is covering. We have confirmation that they will continue to honor that in for the next fiscal year.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I wanted to make sure we had that because I think that's important. I hear what you're saying, Steve, about the kiosk, but I also recognize that if you're gonna take, you got to give a little. And so I agree with what Sarah is saying in regards to the kiosk. Maybe for the budget request versus 0 for this year, because it's really hard to go from 0 and then did you say 2029? Is that what you said when we're going to potentially then? So it's really hard to go from 0 for, 2 fiscal years to then say, and now magically we need it again and have enough running memory.
Right.
I would rather leave something there, even if it's 100, to cover the batteries or whatever it might be. Because at least as a placeholder, because I feel like the 0 is going to be hard to then come back and justify, hey, we have to start paying for these pickups.
It's a good point.
Trying to think if there's anything.
Also, there was the issue of potentially using the opioid funds. So that changes it too.
Right.
It
So I
necessarily
think
need to be in this budget.
and until we can ensure that the maintenance is one of the uses of the funds, I think that we have to at least, yeah. And if we, well, I'm gonna say that. Question one other, just kind of thinking about contingencies. In terms of staff computers, let's say someone's laptop dies in September or has a tragic accident or something, and we need to replace it. Where is that in the FY27 budget? Do we have that in there, or would that be a new ask?
That's never been allocated in the budget, to my knowledge. I looked over because I did think about that. I thought about it with office supplies, and I did look through sort of like what is allocated from the office supplies. But then I talked to um, I am blanking on who I spoke to about this, but I believe that it comes out of IT budget. I believe that IT has like an allocated budget for all town hall staff to have an appropriate setup with their laptop, or desktop or a phone, because so where it says the Board of Health telephone, that's our plan, whereas our physical telephones are purchased through the IT department. And I believe I can double check that as well, but I believe that that does all come from the IT department, similar to how printers come from the IT department. Um, and I think that came from a conversation that I had with Heidi about the fact that she doesn't have a laptop, but she has a desktop. But I don't know for sure that that is where this information came from. But I
Yeah.
do know that like our printers, our fax line, all of that, all of like our actual phones and like our office, that is all paid for through the IT budget.
And I think, because I had looked into this previously too, I think that the IT department has a replacement plan based on kind of usable life. And I don't know what their replacement plan is, if it's every 6 years for laptops or whatever it might be. And so absolutely it's covered within that kind of updating plan. I think the only thing that I think about, and I'm not sure that it needs to be captured in this budget, is the what happens in the event that a laptop's usually a couple $1,000s, right? In the event there's an accident and a laptop is no longer serviceable, and it's before its replacement period. I mean, maybe we just live with that uncertainty, and if that happens, you have to ask for the money. But I think that would be the only thing I would just pitch if we needed to do that. Or I think we just hope that we don't have any laptop catastrophes.
I will say that if there is for one member of our staff some emergency catastrophe, there's a Board of Health tablet that does not get used that could be connected to a $20 USB-C keyboard until we are able to find a more permanent solution. But that's what Mark does. He has a tablet with a keyboard and a monitor. So if there was some tragic accident that happened, we would be able to do something similar. We do just have a spare tablet floating around. So
Okay. And that has been issued to us through shared services. Is that right, Daryl? Was that the one that was given to us as part of the new food inspection software?
I'm
Or
not
was that something we
sure.
bought independently? Okay.
It,
there
I
is
think
a
we
food
did get two of those,
We did
but
get two.
I'm not.
Oh,
I think we did.
I knew we had at least one.
I assume Tom has one.
Okay. So I think we have a backup plan, and that is my goal, because none of our staff can do their jobs without a device. Um, I think that's the extent of my question. I think you guys did an excellent job. Other board members, questions, comments?
I just find it curious that, granted, we're looking at from actual data from 2023 on forward, and how there's been, my understanding is that there's been an overage every year, but yet we have to budget very conservatively, which isn't really based on realistic estimates. So I wish you, Sarah, success in pushing through the new numbers. Because
Thank
otherwise,
you.
it'll once again go through what? The general fund covering expenses.
Yeah,
Transfer.
thank you.
Although
Yeah, thanks so much.
part of me is just,
Oh, Daryl, can Rebecca just have a second? She hasn't been able to go ahead to Rebecca.
yep.
Oh,
Go
I
ahead.
just wanted to say thank you. I appreciate the detailed overview and all the effort that you both put into it.
So
Okay,
I was just going to say that I think one of the challenges the advisory has is to avoid having to go to a Prop 2.5 override.
Yes, I was thinking
And
about
that-
that, Daryl, but yet reality is that we're kind of behind. And this data is from, we goes back to 2023, but probably could even go back further. That there's a discrepancy between actual need of time for our food inspector and health agent and versus what's being budgeted. But yes, there's,
Although they've never not paid when we go over,
yeah.
right? So we go over and the monies are found.
Yes,
And part of
yes.
that last year, even though it was a big number that we were over 17,000, I forget, something like that, 1,000. But we were able to show that the revenues from the permits covered, more than covered. So
Great.
again, for whatever reason, it has been their preferred way of doing it, no matter what we say. And as I said, taken different tactics each year on like what data to bring out and show and compare and graphs and all the rest. But so it doesn't mean we shouldn't continue to try and put the best numbers forward, but we'll see what happens.
Yep.
All right, so we need a motion to approve this. Yep. So do I have a motion to approve the FY 27 budget as proposed?
So moved.
Seconded.
Further discussion or friendly amendments? Hearing none. Go ahead, Daryl.
Daryl Beardsley, aye.
Steve Constantine, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
All right, motion passes. Good luck, Steve and Sarah, and let us know. Sarah, have you had been able to be in touch with our advisory liaisons yet?
No, we
Oh no, she froze up. Sarah, you've frozen on. Can you repeat that?
yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Sorry, they're doing construction on the T right outside my apartment, and I think it's messing with our Wi-Fi. But
I go to
oh,
liaisons. Have you been
yes.
able to meet with them?
I was talking to Diane about that, about contacting them, and she said that we should wait until after we meet with the director of finance and the assistant town administrator and the town administrator, which will be next Friday, because they're not going to be reviewing that until January. So they're doing it. I don't know if that's how they've done it in the past, but
Yeah, more or less. Okay, excellent. Thank you. Okay, excellent. So that is our budget review. Sarah, I'm gonna let you choose. Do you want to continue the fee schedule discussion, or do you want to take a slightly easier one and go to the 2026 meeting schedule?
I already pulled up the 2026 meeting schedule, so just next under my cursor.
Perfect.
Um,
Go ahead and do
mhm.
that.
So why is this not working? What's happening here? Oh. Okay, there we go. So this has all been shared with you. We've already had a chance to look it over. There are a few dates of note. I kept the same schedule as the first and third Wednesday of the month at 7 o'clock, with months where there is no school, to have one meeting a month. That is how it was explained to me. It has been done in the past. That is what I wanted to continue doing. You will notice that some of the times have asterisks next to them, and that is because they are holidays. However, these holidays were not listed as holidays where you're not permitted to work, except for the first day of Passover, which is April 1st, 2026. However, that is a contention as to whether or not you are not supposed to work on that date. So I didn't feel that it was I didn't feel it was a requirement to adjust that meeting date, because it is not a law to not work on that day in that faith. And I could not find any information on Orthodox Christmas Day or Holy, if those are days of non-work permitted. But
Okay, so
So
it looks like we have one.
typically in April, we usually have one meeting
Yeah.
because, I mean, the coming year would be different because we're starting right at April 1st. So there's time to get in the second meeting without running into the vacation week and town meeting week. But we could consider having just a meeting on April 8th. And then that would avoid the first day of Passover. And it would also keep what we've had in the past with just one meeting, because people are pretty busy anyway leading up to town meeting in April also.
Mhm. I like the idea of, so yes, it just so happens that the calendar this year allows for potentially 2 April meetings, but I think sticking to one is fair. And if that means omitting the potential conflict on the 1st, then I'm all for that. And whether that is moving to the 8th or moving to the 15th and just keeping one of those meetings, I think either would be fine. Board members, do you have a preference between the second Wednesday in April or the third Wednesday in April?
When is town meeting?
And when is the school vacation?
School vacation is the week after the 15th, whatever that week is.
Okay.
Town meeting would be then the week after that.
So I guess the school vacation is the week of the 20th of April. And then, yeah, town meeting will be, I think, the Tuesday, the 28th. I'm just saying that because it's usually the last Tuesday in April.
Okay, so that's, yeah, so that's later, because that's a long night.
Yeah. So do we want to
I would
do
probably pick the 8th just to put it more in the middle of the last March and the first May meeting.
and is there any other board that meets the second Wednesday of April where it would be a hardship for anyone coming before our board that would also have to come before another board? I don't think so. ZBA tends to be
Groundwater,
Tuesdays.
I think, does the alternate Wednesdays from us.
So this would be, and Thomas left. This would potentially be a conflict with GPC. But no one is coming before them for business. It would be just, all right, so are we consensus to reduce the proposed April schedule to one meeting date on the second Wednesday of April 8th?
Sounds
I
good.
am. I'd
Yep.
say the only thing we should keep in mind is if, depending on how applications might be rolling in and the 45-day response time, maybe we would need to juggle that to accommodate things and keep them on track and avoid presumptive approvals.
I will say that it looks like the Dover Sherborn Regional School Committee meets on the second Wednesday.
Yeah, but if anyone is coming before, I'm thinking from the regulatory perspective, if someone had to go before, say, the Conservation Commission and also had to come before the Board of Health, it would be a hardship on that applicant if the meetings were on the exact same day. Um, so, so I think that'll be okay. Okay. So we are changing April to be one meeting on April 8th. I then wanted to look at June. We have typically tried to meet 2 times in June. There was one year where the second meeting fell on Juneteenth. And so that kind of threw it off. Right now it's proposed as June 10th, and it looks like we could potentially do June 3rd and 17th. And I'm wondering what,
School ends on the 16th.
yeah, unless there's snow days. Which
So that's why
TBD.
because that's why I asked Jean, and she said that if that's usually not a good date.
Oh,
Because also I think graduation is around then.
actually, the high school will graduate a little earlier.
Earlier.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
They
Well,
graduate early.
Um, so I think obviously June has a little variation in it versus 1 or 2 meetings. What is the sense of the board?
We've usually done 2 in June.
Okay. So that would change the June 10th date to June 3rd and 17th instead. And that in little ways, I don't know if it offsets the April meeting date, but I kind of like having the 2 meeting dates in June since as we go into July and August, I think it might help so we don't need to have then a special meeting during the summer. We've had to do that on a few occasions. I believe it was the year that the second Wednesday or the third Wednesday fell on Juneteenth that we ended up having to have a special meeting in the middle of summer because of the 45-day timeline. And so I think we all would love to avoid that. So my preference is to have 2 meetings in June on the 3rd and the 17th in hopes that means that we can stick to just 2 meetings for the summer.
Yeah.
Anyone else feel
No, I
differently?
think that sounds good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Steve or Rebecca, strong
Pull
feelings?
it off 100%.
I think
I'm fine with that.
Also,
Okay. So Sarah, if we can change the proposed date in June to 3 and 17 and scratch the 10th. And I really, really appreciate, Sarah, that you called out the religious holidays aside from the federal holidays, because I think we should be considering that.
sorry, just to clarify, it's the 3rd and
The 3rd and the 17th. Let me make sure I have that right. Yeah, the 3rd and the 17th.
can you repeat what you just said about the religious and the other holiday?
So we can't have meetings on federal holidays.
Hmm.
There are religious holidays for different religions that are not federal holidays.
Mhm.
They are still pertinent to residents, right? And I think it is being sensitive to the diversity in our community if we try to, when possible, avoid any major religious holidays. And so Sarah very nicely went through and reconciled all those calendars for us. Um, and so I think
Except
that
we
is
didn't
really,
address Holy, which I would think would be another runner-up for in terms of population in town, but
Hmm. What would you propose doing there, Daryl? I think we would
I
end
don't
up,
have any great ideas because
yeah. I think this is the challenge with
it's,
schedules.
yes,
We
it's
could,
difficult.
Go ahead, Sarah.
I was gonna say we could move the February meeting a week to the third Wednesday.
Is that the school vacation though?
Yeah, I forgot that they do February vacation here.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not sure what there were no guidelines on how to accommodate Holy as a holiday in the workplace, whereas for other major holidays it says there are no guidelines, but I'm not sure. I don't have any personal experience with it, so I don't know if anyone else knows, but I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't see a great workaround in March because if we move to the second and fourth Thursday in March, I suppose we could potentially do that. I think other regulatory boards, engineers, and I think people know that we have a pretty consistent first and third schedule on Wednesdays, and it kind of throws folks off a little bit. It would be my only concern about switching in March just to the second and fourth. What do other members think? Keep the first and third and recognize there's a conflict on the on March 4th with it's the start of Holy, or switch to the second and fourth.
I think it gets messy if we make multiple changes to different weeks, because then we're overlapping more often with someone else, some other group.
Anyone else? Okay, so it sounds like we are reluctantly keeping the first and third March dates of the 4th and the 18th. Okay.
And if we happen to have something come up where someone who would otherwise be celebrating that holiday needs something, we can address that by shifting when we know that, or we've had on occasion like a 15-minute special meeting to address somebody's particular need.
Yeah.
Sorry,
And
turn off my camera. I'm just reading over the lawyer advisory for Holy. And it's a celebration of spring, so there is no requirement it just says be mindful and accommodating for flexible work hours for holy celebrations. But it doesn't say that there's any requirement for those who celebrate Holy to not work.
Interesting that phrase, like just spring, that's somebody's religion, that's their religious belief. So I'm not blaming you, I'm just saying it's an interesting thing that's how it's been analyzed. The other thing we could do is for the holidays that are marked, but we're going to be having meetings on them, is to make sure that we don't do something like review the fees, that's not one of the meetings that we're doing that, where people, if they wanted to make comment on policy, that's different than just missing a meeting and now being able to review it online. So But if you want to give feedback and input on something we're deciding on a policy level, then that we should avoid having that on a holiday.
Mhm. Can we go down to December? I think there's a small typo. I don't think we're being proposed to meet on the 12th and the 16th. I think it's the 2nd and the 16th.
You're right.
I don't think the 2nd is the first day of Hanukkah. I think the first day of Hanukkah is the 5th. At least that's what my phone tells me.
I think you're right.
And so I think we can
I don't-
eliminate that.
Yeah, I don't know why I have the 12.
So we just want it, and then we'll have the 1st and 3rd in December, and we avoid any conflict with Hanukkah. Excellent.
Also, Hanukkah isn't, you can work from home. Most people won't take off. It's really like if they're kids. But my
Okay.
typo is
Excellent. So we have the 2nd and the 16th. All right. Any other conflicts, changes anyone sees? Otherwise, we'll move to approve it. Hearing none. Do I have a motion to approve the 2026 meeting schedule as outlined?
So moved.
Seconded.
Hearing no further discussion.
Daryl Beardsley, aye.
Steve Constantine, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Excellent. All right, we can, why don't we go ahead and continue the discussion around the proposed fee schedule? Sarah, you have been leading this discussion.
yeah.
Unless you need a second to get that together, then we can always do the meeting minutes if you need a minute.
I want to do the meeting minutes. That's fine. I can actually go fill my water bottle if you don't mind.
Okay, we'll take the meeting minutes next. So the draft that was submitted to us was the November 19th meeting minutes. We have a majority of folks who had time to look that over. I looked it over, submitted very, very tiny grammatical edits around parentheses, and I corrected the spelling of Dr. Honeywell's name.
Oh, thank you, Vic. That was my only comment.
Yeah, I don't know why I didn't catch that. I'm so sorry.
I don't care. It's
Well,
fine.
it's interesting. AI actually had it right in one location and wrong in another location. It was Honey. And I thought that's a really interesting error on AI's part. So, but that's all I submitted. Anyone else?
Mhm.
I had bigger things, mostly about cutting stuff out that was discussed, but we usually don't include certain information, like when Mark reviews the Presby system, it's going to have to be maintained. And so in the spirit of trying to keep the minutes shorter and then consistent with how it's been done, I just made those suggestions that big swaths be taken out of detail that I didn't think was necessary, or our lead up discussion to making a motion. You know, these things should be included, and then the motion had all those things in it. So I don't know what the rest of the board feels, but I know we've had comments about meeting minutes are too long. Also, for us using them, we want the important points on like pivotal issues for making a decision, accurately capturing.
It's important information. Some of it. I don't know. I think it's more important for it to have important information that makes the minutes informative. I mean, I don't know. I'm sure that's a reason to cut it out. That's all I'm saying.
Well, now we have recordings that people can hear everything, but typically we haven't reviewed every in the minutes. I'm just saying historically what the minutes have included and not included. They didn't always go and say, you know, we did X number of deep holes, and here's what we found in each deep hole, because the plan has that on it. So there are other documents. So, but again, that's to try to address both the minutes writers, but now that AI is doing it, that issue might be gone. I mean, even Sarah was talking about how to streamline it in the beginning. Everyone's always said that about our minutes. So I was just trying to address that issue.
Mhm.
But none of it was bad information. It was just beyond what we normally would include.
I think sometimes it's useful information. I don't know. Makes the minutes informative. I mean, I don't know. That's my opinion.
It looks like, hang on. So I'm trying to figure out, because I think Sarah stepped away for a second. Daryl, if it looks like Sarah initially sent a draft. Hey, Sarah.
Sorry.
Where the edits, it looks like Sarah sent an initial draft of the minutes on Tuesday, the 25th. And then I think she reattached them in when she sent the documents folder for today's meeting on Monday, December 1st. We're in December 1st.
Okay,
Daryl, did the second
25th.
submission, on, or the second, were your minutes incorporated in the draft distributed on Monday? Or did you submit your edits after Monday?
The edits I sent, I didn't look at the Monday. I assumed it was the same. Sorry, I missed that.
No, I think it is
They
the
were
same. What I'm
different.
trying to understand is you've described substantive edits. Before the board votes, I think we should review those edits. And I'm just trying to determine if the last draft version was what that included your edits or not. And it sounds like no.
No.
Okay.
And you know what? If people don't mind them being longer and having kind of some redundant information, fine. There was nothing that was wrong. I was just trying to aim for something a little more concise.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you,
They
Daryl,
could be
that
approved as they were and ignore what I did.
there were parts of what AI captures that I think are nuances of discussion that I would like to see included. And I think that goes to Rebecca's point. There are parts of it that are pretty relevant. There are also parts of our discussions that AI seems to be including that are tangential and could be removed from the minutes. I guess I ended up landing on kind of trying to see if we were to work with what AI is drafting with just, a light edit from the administrator in terms of just being efficient with the use of our staff's time. Is this an okay rendition with these tangents that occasionally occur from the AI? That was my working theory. So I think we have two options. We can either vote on the minutes based on the draft that was sent on December 1st, which is the same draft that was sent prior to Thanksgiving. Or we can or we can hold off on a motion and a vote, and we can ask Sarah to send us the incorporated edits from Daryl, and we will have a motion on this at our the 17th on our meeting, because we'll still be in compliance with open meeting law. Since these
I
are,
would say move ahead and we could discuss this at another time. Part of me also, we haven't been doing it as much as we used to do it, and that is just kind of a change in systems of tracking projects and relevant sets of minutes for them. But we used to read through nearly every meeting. We would be reviewing past minutes in order to make a decision about a property before us. We just haven't had that dynamic in the last year and a half. and then having the minutes be limited to be a bit more concise does become important to the board, but I don't know if we're going to return to that or not.
I will
Okay.
say that the more detail has helped me as I'm stepping into my role. Being able to go back and look at minutes to understand things has been very helpful for me. Just sort of to get an understanding of certain topics and also just random little things that have happened where Jean and I have reviewed minutes and been like, oh, okay, that's what we did last time. So I will say that aside from reviewing them in meetings, we do actually use the minutes, I'd say, as a resource in the office as well.
I think there's value to some of those details because other people are trying to understand things as well. For example, like a new homeowner might have a question about what happened with their own property, and the minutes can be helpful for historical details, or I don't know. But I think it's mostly to have it be a resource more than just to meet, the law, the open meeting law. That's my
Right, that's
opinion.
not what I was trying to do. I was not trying to eliminate anything useful, but I think that having the elements of a motion discussed and written out by AI, and then the motion, including all those elements in their final form, that's doubling up. That was not.
That's actually
Yes,
me
they were
doing
following the
that.
conversation, but that wasn't key.
That's actually me doing that, not AI, because that's how I read all the other minutes previously. AI does it where they don't include the actual language of the motion. They include the discussion and then say a motion was made to pass this. I include the language of the motion because that's how I've
That's what we really
interpreted
want to
past
get
minutes.
to.
It's the most critical piece. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, just sort of, I don't know, as someone who may not know anything about septics, that can be a little confusing.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure. I'm still working on understanding the purpose of the minutes and what exactly, the board wants to capture with them. So that's just my 2 cents. But I don't want to blame the robots when that's me.
Well, I'm glad that you go in and add clarity to the motion and the wording. That's very important. It sounds like this is just going to be an evolving process. And I think, particularly Sarah, as you're growing into your role, I think having the minutes kind of grow with you makes sense. I would feel comfortable. I'm looking at you, Daryl, you can't tell. I would feel comfortable voting on the minutes without your edits, excluding them. But if you feel strongly about trimming down the language, then I think we should just bring this back to the next meeting. And I don't mean that in any way dismissive of your edits, but I think I'm recognizing what our administrator is saying.
I felt it was the right thing to do, which is why I spend time on it.
Okay. So why don't we, okay.
If that doesn't seem, I am willing to go with the flow, and I am not going to put that time in the future.
Okay.
Until there's a change in opinion.
Okay. So let's do this. Let's hold
a lot
off.
of time figuring out if this is the right balance, but that's okay.
All right, so to proceed, let's do this. Sarah, if you could, for the December 17th meeting, if you can send an updated draft of the November 19th, I'm gonna get these dates right.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Oh, I thought you wanted us to look at
Approving
your
them
edits.
as they are, except look for some of the typos I corrected and things that were not the block. Remove this, or announcing that, the homeowner and the engineer was there. We never put, you can tell that from just who speaks. Anyway, those were kinds of things I was plucking out because they're just unnecessary verbiage. But
I don't think it adds too much to push it to the next meeting. I'm not sure if that's I mean, I want to include everyone's edits. I just didn't get a chance to review them before the meeting.
Yeah. So Daryl, I think I'm confused now. What would you like us to do?
I'm willing to vote on them pretty much as is. I'm just saying there are a few other edits I made that were minor, but should be made. Title
Beyond,
5, Title V, the
oh
little,
yeah,
little stuff.
grammatical. Yeah, that's what I said. Okay. Okay. So Sarah, we're going to give you really confusing marching orders. So the grammatical edits that you received, those should be incorporated because we like good grammar. Any substantive edits that you received, those should not be incorporated, and such that I will move to approve the draft minutes from November 19th as sent on December 1st with grammatical edits. Does anyone want to move that?
That was the motion. So
That was
moved.
my motion.
So moved.
Seconded.
All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none.
Cheryl Beardsley, aye.
Steve Constantine, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Okay, motion carries. Sarah, did we get most of this? Was that too confusing? If it
No.
is, come back. Okay. Or I guess AI can. Okay. Excellent. So last discussion point will be the fee schedule, picking that back up.
Yes. So earlier today, I sent an email at around 1 o'clock to the board members, using BCC, of course, about the food permits. This has been a discussion that we've had in the office for quite some time about the differences in temporary food establishments and the cost of service and time. So we sat down as a team on Tuesday to sort of discuss the problem. Primarily me and Jean. Mark was snowed in. So, but with the food permits, primarily that's me and Jean and Tom as well. But Tom's not in the office on a regular basis. I digress. Tom was looped in today, and I'll get to that in a second. So we started this draft, and I'm going to pull it up right here to share with you, but it's important to note that there have been some updates that are not reflected on this that I will walk everyone through in just a second here. So, okay. It's a little messy right now, but
It's a working document. That's expected.
yes. So this is the food service flow chart. And what you see in purple are the new food categories. So instead of having a permit that says restaurant 100 seats or more, it's going to be labeled as a tier 2 restaurant. That's one example. And instead of having one mobile food permit, it will be, there are 3 different tiers because there is a drastic difference in time spent reviewing applications and actual inspections required for these 3 different types of mobile food permits. The same goes for a temporary.
Sarah has frozen. Sarah,
Hello?
You are back. We can hear you now.
Yay. Okay, where'd you last hear me?
You were explaining the tiers of mobile foods that are being created.
Okay.
In different permits.
So these yellow boxes here, I don't know, can you see my cursor?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So these yellow boxes here, there is a drastic difference in the amount of time it takes to review a permit application for an establishment that prepares and sells TCS foods versus one that does not prepare, that prepares and sells non-TCS foods, and one that sells commercially prepackaged foods.
ECS.
Time temperature control for safety.
Thank you.
They were previously referred to as potentially hazardous foods, or PHF. But they have updated the food code since it was updated in 2022, which is also why we've updated all of our food permit applications as well. Same for restaurants, retails, things of that nature. So what I actually did today, this afternoon after our land use department meeting, is I went through and because I wanted to establish the change in revenue, which is part of the permit fee proposal, because all of our temporary foods have been classified as the same. And what I found is we've actually been misclassifying a lot of our food permits based on sort of a precedent that was set. I'm not sure if it was set based on the old food code or if it was set for whatever reason, but a lot of our temporary establishments are actually mobile food establishments. A lot of our retail establishments, by a lot, I mean a few, I feel like a lot, several might be a better descriptor. Retail establishments are actually restaurants. There's very specific definitions in the food code that have been missed. And I did speak to Tom about this because I wanted to make sure I wasn't speaking out of turn and, undermining his authority as the food inspector. And he told me that he has no say in classifying them when the permit is issued. One really prevalent example of this is C&L Frosty. C&L Frosty has seating, which means it's not food retail. It is a restaurant, and it has been classified as food retail, and they have a retail permit, but they should have a restaurant permit. It costs actually the same, but that is just one example. There's several temporary permits that have been issued for food trucks that should be for mobile food permits. However, historically, we've only had this annual mobile food permit. I also realized that I did not encompass all of the types of permits we have. Two in particular are for farm stands, which is why there's a little floating bubble over here that says limited stand. And that is to encompass retail, food retail that is not in a building. So that's the farm stands and things of that nature. And also the annual food permit for mobile establishments, which will be put around here as instead of saying how many seats, it will ask what type of establishment it is. Is it mobile or is it a permanent standing? If it's mobile, then that will lead to the annual mobile food permit. And if it is a standalone building, then that is where we get these tiers. Another thing that is not reflected here, but I, before the meeting, actually was on a phone call with Tom, was the existence of a commercial kitchen in Sherborn that is not being permitted as a commercial kitchen in Sherborn, and catering. So that's going to be a much longer discussion between Tom and myself and Jean as well. Mark, you're more than welcome to join. We'd love your input from your time in Ashland, of course. However, that has to do with the state because they distribute ready-to-eat meals that they make, but it's not TCS, so it's not time, temperature, control, safety foods that they're distributing. And they're not distributing them to wholesalers. They are distributing them directly to consumers, but the level of volume of production is classified as commercial. So it gets very complicated in terms of how we need to classify that permit, the number of inspections required. It's something that Tom and I decided that we would not solve in a 15-minute phone conversation. So we're probably going to be hopping on a call sometime next week to really iron out the details of that. It's all fresh go, I think is what it's called. where they do like vegan, ready to eat meals. So that is where all of these new names come from. I'm very open to renaming them. This was just sort of where I came up with these names. Not the qualifications for them, just the names. One thing that this doesn't encompass is catering, and that is because catering permits versus a catering license is very different, and Sherborn has not been treating them differently. We have not been permitting caterers to come into Sherborn to cater events, which is acceptable under the food code. We aren't required to do that. However, we don't license caterers either, which kind of creates a weird cycle, which again is something that Tom and I decided we're not going to solve in a 15-minute phone call before the meeting. So that is also something that will be brought up. And the last thing that we discussed was the permitting for ice cream trucks being different than the permitting of mobile food trucks. And he told me a story about Mark chasing a food truck through Holliston Public Park. And I just don't want that to accidentally happen to us, because the way the food code is written is that it is not, if you're permitted in your hometown, you can serve, but it's not applicable in all towns. And so it can get very complicated and very confusing. And he was, again, something that we are going to be scheduling a phone call to discuss further next week. So this was a major change to the food permit schedule. And this is a work in progress, this specific document. This is another document that is also a work in progress about food permits that will be shared with the fee schedule. I'm just going to share it really quickly just to give you guys an overview. And then what this includes is sort of like this is a more official looking, I guess you could say, view of the food establishment permit. So it includes all of the definitions from the food code, plus the referenced paragraph in the food code that we reference on our applications, the 6 types of food permits, and then what food permits cover. So that's just all listed here, and it's all very technical. This is not actually relevant. Just gonna delete that. We can ignore that. This is also adapted from the FDA. It's how you determine if something is TCS or not, because it's a little bit different than potentially hazard food, which was the old one. So now we get to go look at the fun stuff, which is the current proposed list. And today, Mark, Jean, and myself sat and really just made sure that everything was good on this. Another big change here is the building applications. Those fees have changed to more accurately reflect the time that is spent on the different types of building permits. So the key changes from this time to last time, we included a note here about what is defined, what a soil testing site is defined as, because it is charged each site. So this is taken directly from our regulations as to what a soil test site is. And it also states that if the agent wants to designate any additional test pits, then the applicant is not required to supplement that fee. However, if the applicant asks for more, then they are required to supplement that fee. And also we did reduce the IA technology review fee from 150 to 75. And we did reduce the fee for both variances from 300 to 200 to just ensure we are practicing our most, for replacements, we're being as equitable as possible to people who may just not have the land to be able to do a traditional system or not request variances. And then these are the building permits. And I do have the same presentation that I have updated slightly with the building permit and food permit information. I can pull that up if we want. Or do we want to see that as well? Yes.
Can we pause and process this and then go to the,
Of course.
you're doing a great job. It's a lot for all of us to take
Sorry.
in.
Actually,
Um,
really great.
Do you have additional questions or comments, Rebecca?
No. I just appreciate all this, the detail and the time that you spent. Really great. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been a while.
I have a question about the classification of food establishments.
Mhm.
If it's not the food inspector, who's been doing that? Are the owners self-identifying what they are?
No, it's been an office task. He said that Ellen mostly was classifying them when writing the permits. And I think for the most part, it's just been precedent that has been set. One example again being
That
Sand
C&L
Frosty.
Frosty, for example,
Mhm.
just got classified in some way in the past.
Yeah,
And that
because when we send out the
was
letters
carried over.
now, we really just take what we have in our file and we just include that. We don't change anything.
I wonder if that classification has something to do with the restroom facilities. That's somehow carried over from something that happened in the past. Anyway.
Well, and restrooms are based on the plumbing codes. So if you require restrooms, would be under the plumbing code. C&L Frosty is a good example of a place that was grandfathered for a long time, but they require bathrooms based on the plumbing code.
Mm.
For customers, they do have the one for
Yeah,
employees.
there's a limit within the plumbing code that says after so many seats, I think it's 50, you need to have a bathroom.
Did you say seats, Mark?
Seats, that's correct. It's based on seats.
They only have 24.
Yeah, it could be, again, I'm going back
Right.
many,
I mean, I don't
we
know
were
off the
dealing
top of
with
my
it.
head. I just know
It,
that they have
it could
24.
be less than 24 then, because I know they've been required to put in a bathroom in process, I believe, at this time.
Mhm.
Terrell, were you done with your question? Let's see.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I agree with Rebecca. This is all good. And I think that I believe this is probably a continuing discussion amongst staff. But in terms of the soil testing, I think the asterisk or the footnote here about what does the proposed $380 what is that inclusive of? I think one of the things that Jean and I were encountering on a limited basis, but encountered was what do you do when an applicant is proposing one test site, and in that site they're asking for 3D polls in two parks, and they also want to go and do two additional test sites, but just one deep hole because perhaps it's a test site that's been tested before and they want to do a little further excavation because they're considering relocating where the proposed SAS is. Like what happens when you have those one-offs, when you have one additional test pit here, one additional perk test here, and how do we account for Mark's time in terms of, if it's reasonable for him to be out there for 4 hours. What happens if someone keeps him out there for 8 hours? We really need to be capturing that better. So I think at the end of the day, having clarity amongst staff about how to accurately assess the fees, I think is, I'm sure you guys are going to be working that out, but that was one of the things that June and I were scratching our heads about is, if somebody is functionally doing 3 deep holes and 2 perks, but on 5 different sites, like, does that count as one site or is that different? Because it takes time for the agent to go to all of those different sites.
Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that is covered here, where they're distributed within the limits of the proposed leaching area. So if
Yeah,
they submit,
correct.
yes, so if they submit a plan to have the SAS here, this is going to be hard because I'm
Site A.
green screen background. But so this is where they propose, but when we get there and they submit their application, they want to do an extra test pit here just in case. That is now 2 sites because that is not within the proposed area for the leaching field.
And
Yeah,
so
we find that
an additional 380 would be assessed even if they only do one deep hole test pit.
yeah,
Correct.
it will prevent people doing large septic systems for subdivisions, paying only for one site visit, when they're doing maybe 3 different soil absorption area sites. And so this will help to pay for the services that are provided to observe all those test holes. And this will help resolve it because that has happened in the past where someone might be testing half a size of a football field and they want to do limited testing. So this we're trying to strengthen the language so that the fee paid is will pay for the services provided.
Okay.
And then, Julie, to answer your second piece of that query about compensating for time, we did think about that a lot. A lot of other towns who don't rely as heavily on septic do have their soil testing fee calculated by hours. So it's for every 4 hours, and then every additional hour is an additional fee. Our primary concern with that, considering our agent is an hourly employee, is that could open us up to a lot of scrutiny from people where they can say, you know, I'm not saying Mark would ever do this, but we feel as though there could be the chance to open that door to say he was taking too long or it wasn't efficient. I'm not paying this. And we really didn't want to open up that possibility. I think it might be a little bit different if, we could say this doesn't go directly.
Sarah, you're frozen up.
I don't think that it would. Am I frozen again?
You briefly
no.
A bit,
froze.
yeah.
Okay. I was just saying, I think that we did think about it, we did contemplate it. It was a very back and forth conversation that wasn't really that back and forth. We kind of were all just like, this could go really, really wrong really, really fast. This was an issue that we also had with the IA tech review fee. Some take 5 minutes, some take hours. And we can't charge based on that. We can't say, because at the end of the day, that is going to open us up to a lot of potential for pushback from people if they don't want to pay.
Okay. So then we will capture that in sites tested. And then I think you guys are doing a great job, and I don't want to belabor the point, but just to add to your discussion, typically when we see a soil test application, we have like a site locus or some type of a site map, and then there will be a box around an area for the proposed site test. This is maybe a question for Mark. I don't know if there is some type of a finite size that box could be because I could see somebody having a pretty generous sized box in order to say this is all one site, and within that they're going to try to move around quite a bit. But I don't know if there's a formula for that or if that just is the sniff test. I don't know.
And we
I,
could put maybe up to so many bedrooms, up to, because the system does have to be larger if it's going to be than, say, more than 4 bedrooms or 5.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. We're testing the waters, as they say, and not for sure if this will be the final statement that we have, depending on how we see applications come in. Again, if we see something coming in for 35 bedrooms, there's going to have to be a consideration for more deep holes and larger sites. So that's where it's going to, maybe we could put for each individual, no, because a dwelling could have 35 bedrooms. But the wording, we're trying to close it in to some degree because it was abused before. So maybe it could be based on a limit of bedrooms. I'm not for sure how that could work, but I have seen the issue of soil testing being done for one site, which included maybe 10 bedrooms or 10 units. So indeed, yeah, we're trying to tighten it up to some degree. And typically you're required 3 depots and 2 perks per dwelling. And maybe we could look at, if it's above and beyond a single dwelling, but we got to define single dwelling too to make sure it's your average household, 4 or 5 bedrooms.
Mhm.
But it's a step forward, but I have a feeling we might need to tighten up the language if we see it being abused.
It is a very tricky one.
Yes.
I appreciate the work and thought you guys are putting into that. And at the end of the day, my opinion is it is the staff that needs to understand the fee schedule and how to apply it based on what's presented to them. And so it has to resonate with those who are actually implementing it. So I will definitely defer to you guys to kind of hash that out. But this all looks like it's fantastic.
It's better than what it was in respect to soil testing. And as I mentioned at the last meeting, Sarah's put a lot of work into this fee schedule, and I appreciate it because it also will help the advisory committee to understand we're generating revenue for the time put in. So it's more accurate now for the time that we put into any type of fee.
Yeah, I think that's a very important connection. It's based on actual data.
yeah.
Yeah.
I can pull up the number. I have it right here.
And Sarah, I got us off on the soil testing. I think you wanted to, and I'm cognizant of time, and we're going on 9:30, so this is going to be a continuing discussion. But if you wanted to, I think you were going to something with food permits you were going to pull up. If you want to pull that up quick, or if you would prefer to just defer that, it's your call.
Um, I can. I'll just really quick would like to share because we were talking about revenue, the change in revenue that we'll expect to see from this. So from exclusively wells, septics, and miscellaneous permits, we'll expect about $6,000 more or an 11% increase. For Board of Health review of building permits, we're going to see about a 50% increase. And then this is the reclassification. Everything for the most part has stayed the same. Where mobile food vendors and temporary establishments are concerned, the original temporary establishment fee was $50. The reconfigured fee was $60. We've determined that a tier 3 temporary establishment is $75, tier 2 is $60, tier 1 is $30. For a mobile food vendor, we're looking at 200 for a tier 3, 150 for a tier 2, and a tier 1 is 50. That's purely based on the amount of time required for the inspection, because that does differ with what they are serving, which is outlined previously. These are food permits that we will not be offering anymore. When I looked through all of our food permits, there was one limited retail seasonal, and that's not something that's defined in the food code, as limited retail isn't defined anywhere in the food code that I could find. The reinspection fee was pointed out that we very rarely actually ever enforce that, because a lot of the time there is a need for reinspection if there's any type of failure. And then same for private institution, nonprofit, and public institution, nonprofit. Those aren't defined in the food code. And the multi-vendor mobile food event, this has a lot of problems with it. For starters, the food code clearly states that you're not intended to permit the host of the event. You have to permit the vendor. So when we were having this, we were not permitting individual vendors as much. And there wasn't really, we were losing a lot of money with that. So we have discussed potentially including a discount. However, again, that sort of gets into who is paying for what. And so that is where we're kind of still at a crossroads, but we determined that it's not logical for us as a staff. Yeah, Daryl.
I think I would like to see the reinspection fee stay, and we did not use it until just a couple of years ago for all the time that I was on the board. I don't know about prior to that, because really we're always just looking for some re-inspections, right? Or it's necessary, right? You do an inspection, you find things, you go back to check on it. That makes sense to include it. But we just happened to hit an establishment that wasn't paying attention and wasn't doing enough, and it was consuming an enormous amount of time. And so by the time we just saw that the problems were lingering and we were sending out the food inspector all the time, that we implemented that and used it just a little bit. Hopefully that it would, one, help cover some costs and be inspirational. So even though we didn't use it much, I think it's still a good tool to have if we encounter that again, but we also need to define what is included with one inspection, with the main inspection. So we'd have to define that so that we have an easy line between regular service and then extraordinary circumstances.
That's actually what we're spending a lot of time talking about today, is the concept of having fines, and how some boards implement fines for a lot of things. And the Board of Health does not. And we were discussing this in retrospect to the revision fee that we pose on applicants for excessive numbers of revisions to plans. And that's how the reinspection fee conversation sort of started. And I think it would be a better term for it to not be a fee, but to be a fine, because in my opinion, it sounds to me that it is more like a imposition if there is negligence, rather than just requiring a reinspection, which is very common. And so the permit itself doesn't include an inspection in the application for a permit. It's not necessarily for the inspection. That would be a different situation altogether, because everything gets an inspection in terms of food. So when it comes to having a reinspection fee, it's not exactly comprehensive of what I am interpreting the intention of it to be. I don't know if that makes sense.
Okay, that makes sense. Maybe
Mhm.
the term reinspection
I think it would be
needs to be changed, like supplemental inspections or something along those lines. I could also see the point of a fine because it is when something has just gone on too long. How that gets viewed in town, relationships with businesses, I don't know. I don't have an answer for that, but that's an interesting point.
So in the
about
original,
whether to make it a fine. And I know that the town has debated the ability to collect on fines as being very difficult.
so in the initial
then,
draft that I drafted months ago, based on all the things that birthed this draft of proposals, I did look at a lot of other towns' fines, and one thing that I think would benefit Sherborn greatly is there's 3 different fines that I think could be implemented. But again, I don't know the politics behind implementing fines. Is the non-compliance reinspection, which is when if Mark or Tom or whomever were to issue an and were to complete an inspection and then say you need to solve A, B, and C, and they give them time, or there's very strict parameters for how long they have to be in compliance with that. And then if they re-inspect and it's non-compliant, then that's a fine, because then they have to go back again. Whereas the re-inspection fee, it's one inspection is covered with, or one revision is covered with the original application, one inspection is covered with the fee, but we need to account for the fact that that inspection is going to lead to in the second inspection. The problem becomes when there's a third and a fourth and a fifth, and they're continuously not compliant with the same issue. If it's a different issue, then that's a different situation that wouldn't necessarily commit, would not result in this non-compliance fine. The second type of fine that we talked about was the conditional certificate of compliance fine, which I actually didn't bring this up. I don't know why I said talk about. I meant to say think about, thought about, where you have to make a conscious effort to get your certificate of compliance within a certain number of years or months, which can mean scheduling mature vegetation. And then there's a warning that gets sent out. I did actually write all this up, and I'm happy to share it with you, that very detailed outlines different types of fines, why they're getting imposed, how they're getting imposed, and how much they would cost. But I think that would be, I think the concept of a reinspection fee isn't capturing what it sounds like you want it to.
well, we have only applied it to one facility, so I can't say I have a detailed concept or model, or whether one terminology or another is more effective. I think it's too late to dive into this, frankly, and need to think about it a little bit more for some of the things that you brought up. Even nuances like inspector goes out for the bona fide reinspection of something that was found earlier. That was corrected, but they noticed something else that's wrong. That shouldn't just not someone shouldn't be sliding out of compliance all the time. So that's kind of an odd situation. So is that still captured under the umbrella of the first fee paid? I don't know. So it is a complicated mix, and I'd rather defer to the food inspector on what are the possible scenarios that they envision happening, and then how do we set up the system to address those issues.
Yeah, I will include that in my conversation with Tom next week as
Yeah.
well. And then this is the change in revenue. Again, we're seeing over 50% increase. This is based on the list of permits that were issued in 2024 that I just had on my computer. This is in no way completely comprehensive, but
Mhm.
this is sort of a baseline of what we can expect to see. So, are there any questions?
I know, I think this is fantastic progress.
This is the total change in revenue, but
Oh, wow. It's total 13.5%. Interesting.
which is, if you look at what we're asking for without the cost of living adjustment, it's about exactly the same.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I feel like that's the double check in the system, right? That's great. Um, Excellent. Um, Sarah, I know you were hoping that we could be able to kind of vote on, implement these fees in the near future. It sounds like you guys are working through fantastic questions. Um, I don't think we're going to be ready to vote on these in 2025, but maybe hopefully soon into 2026. I think it will still be, this is my 2 cents. I think still be relevant in the budgeting process because much of the discussions certainly are happening in February and March. So I don't think we're behind here, is what I'm trying to reassure you, especially since you are really delving into all of the nitty-gritty details, you and the staff. So I'm just very grateful. And I think we'll continue to look at this as time allows us in the agenda. Anyone else have follow-up? I'm just cognizant of we all have sleepy eyes, including myself. So that will a nice segue into the final agenda item, which is updates for next meeting. I would say that Sarah, if you deem appropriate and the time allows, that we can continue the proposed fee change discussion if you want to do that.
Sure.
What else do we have variance hearings? Does anyone know?
I might have some updates on 155 Maple Street.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. Okay, so hopefully we have
And possibly the building application for 5 Washington. So if they're ready, I will present them at the next board meeting.
Something else, I don't know if this requires a board conversation, but we talked about this in the office today. That for like informing engineers when they do submit variance requests, that they should be using the recodified language. Because we no longer have the original regulations or the pre-recodified regulations on our website. So if anyone wanted to check a variance, they would not be able to do that based on the minutes or the variance documents. So we were saying that engineers need to start using our recodified regulations.
can we get I think that's actually, I think all of us need that help. And so could we, we have the more commonly sought variances. Could we give them a little cheat sheet of like, if this used to be 8.01, it's now recodified as, and just for the most common ones to kind of help them out. But I think you're right, we have to move. And I myself have to be better about using the root codified.
When
Yeah,
I
I
do
can.
sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say I can definitely just make that cheat sheet.
Yeah, and it obviously doesn't have to be every single one, but we certainly have our top 10 variances sought.
Well, and I'll be reviewing the plan before the board sees it, so I'll make sure they update them if they don't have the codified numbers.
Yeah, I
And
think
you'll have to do that within the letter as well, so we'll try to catch them ahead of it versus at the other end, so.
Yeah, and help them out because they'll be learning the new recodified regs, as well as hopefully in 2026 they'll be also using the new permit fees. So a lot of changes coming.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else that we know will need to be on the agenda? I think.
I might have an update after my meeting, by my meeting with Steve and Town Administration and Finance Department.
Yeah.
It's next Friday.
I will put in a request to Daryl and Sarah. I know that at the next shared services meeting, they will be introducing the new environmental health agent. Maybe you could give us a little update on that person, and if there's anything they're able to offer now, or kind of where that's at, because I think we are eager to have access to an environmental health agent to help supplement. And I think there is that we have been given notice that there is the potential for an application at 65 Farm Road for Lot 6, which would be triggering our environmental health regulation. If that is submitted, then the board will need to begin the discussion about the EHIR process. I don't know when that will be submitted, but we've been told that it is pending. So when that comes in, we'll begin that discussion. So that may be next time, or it might be in January. I don't know. All right.
All right.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved.
Seconded.
Second.
Hearing no further discussion.
Darrell Beardsley, aye.
Steve Constantine, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Have a great night, everyone.
Good night.
Good
Enjoy the
night.
holidays.
Yep, same to you.
Thank you.